Elysium Hub hung in the black, a jewel against the void. It was a testament to human ambition, or perhaps human folly. The station spun slowly, creating gravity for its privileged residents. Sunlight glinted off its pristine outer shell, while towers scraped the artificial sky within its rotating drum. Parks and waterways offered a vision of paradise. This was the dream OmniCorp sold to the wealthy, a life of ease, high above the struggling colonies, a life bought with the sweat of others. Below the gleaming spires, life was different. The lower decks were a maze of pipes and shadows. Workers lived in cramped grey hab blocks. The air here was recycled too many times, carrying the tang of oil and desperation. These were the people who kept Elysium running. Miners, engineers, service techs, they toiled in obscurity, their labor fueling the luxury above. They rarely saw the sun gardens, never dined in the sky restaurants. Their world was one of hard shifts and meager rations, a stark contrast. OmniCorp controlled everything on Elysium, from the air people breathed to the news they consumed. Their corporate security patrolled the levels, keeping the peace with a heavy hand. Any sign of dissent was swiftly crushed. The elite lived in blissful ignorance, or perhaps willful blindness. They enjoyed their comforts, rarely thinking about the foundations of their gilded cage. The whispers of discontent from the lower decks were easily dismissed, static on a poor connection, until they weren't. The divide was more than physical, it was a chasm of opportunity, of justice. Up-deck children attended exclusive academies, groomed for leadership in OmniCorp. Down-deck children learned trades early, hoping for a steady job, a slightly less cramped bunk. Medical care was world-class in the upper sectors. In the lower, it was basic, often insufficient. This was the reality of Elysium Hub, a shining beacon built on a foundation of inequality, a powder keg waiting for a spark. Captain Elias Varek knew Elysium's underbelly well. He was a child of the lower decks, but he had escaped its gravity well. Now he skippered an aging, independent freighter. It was his home, his freedom. The ship was patched and scarred, much like Varek himself. It smelled of stale coffee and engine coolant, not the perfumed air of Elysium's upper echelons. Varek preferred it that way. He carved out a living on the fringes, hauling cargo others wouldn't touch, asking few questions.
Yeah, that might not look like much, but she's got heart. And I can coax miracles from her tired drives. Been through asteroid fields and blockades with Varek. Loyalty? It's absolute.
Jack's teller, his first mate, was a hulking man with a quiet demeanor. A genius with engines, he had a knack for finding trouble, or trouble finding him. His loyalty to Varek was absolute. They had been through asteroid fields and blockades together. Jax had a network of contacts in every grimy port, contacts that often proved useful. He said little, but when he spoke, Varek listened. Jax was the muscle and the mechanical heart of the crew.
And I'm here to patch up whatever trouble you two get into. Plus, I see the injustice out there, and I believe in something better.
Dr. Lyra Coe was their medic and science officer, sharp, perceptive, with a past she didn't discuss. Some said she'd worked for OmniCorp in their research division before something went wrong. Skilled with a medical scanner and a data slicer, her calm in a crisis was legendary. Lyra saw the injustice of the system clearly. She often patched up workers from the lower decks for free. Her presence gave a touch of unexpected grace. Together, they were a small, tight-knit crew bound by shared experience and a distrust of authority, especially OmniCorp's authority. They navigated the complex politics of the solar system, skirted regulations, delivered their goods, and tried to stay off OmniCorp's radar. It was a precarious existence, but it was theirs. It wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of their independence, a small defiance against a controlling galaxy. They took jobs as they came, always wary.
Officer needed for confined space permit.
Senator Alana Rook was an anomaly, an elected official from an outer colony who actually cared about her constituents. She had a seat on the Elysium Hub Council, a council largely controlled by OmniCorp interests. Rook was a thorn in their side. She asked uncomfortable questions, pushed for transparency, and knew the risks she was taking, but she believed in her duty.
I see the growing desperation, the exploitation, the simmering anger. I've been investigating OmniCorp for months, secretly, carefully. The whispers of illegal research, suppressed technologies. I'm close to something big, something dangerous.
Rook had been investigating OmniCorp for months. Suspecting their public facade hid dark truths. Her sources were few and fearful, but they provided fragments, whispers of illegal research, of suppressed technologies that could free the colonies from OmniCorp's energy monopoly, of plans to tighten their grip on the entire solar system. She was close to something big, something dangerous. The kind of secret that got people killed, especially people like her.
I need help. Someone outside the system. Someone discreet. Varek, yes, he might be my only shot.
She needed help. Someone outside the system, someone discreet. Her usual channels were compromised. OmniCorp's surveillance was pervasive on Elysium. She thought of Captain Varek. She knew his reputation, independent, resourceful, not afraid to bend the rules. She'd encountered him once, briefly. He'd left an impression, a man who understood the value of staying off the grid. He was a long shot, but he might be her only shot. She sent out a coded message, a meeting request, urgent. The message reached the as it docked at a remote asteroid station. Varek was wary. Senators usually meant trouble, especially senators from Elysium Hub, but the urgency in Rook's message was palpable. Lyra decrypted the layers of code. It was sophisticated, desperate.
Walking into a trap, huh? Sounds like my kind of day.
Jax grumbled about walking into a trap. Varek considered the risks, the credits, and the faint possibility of doing something that mattered. He agreed to the meeting, a private rendezvous deep in Elysium's service tunnels. The meeting was tense. Senator Rook was pale, determined. She laid out her findings for Varek and his crew, data chips, encrypted files, testimonies from whistleblowers who had since disappeared. OmniCorp wasn't just exploiting workers. They were systematically suppressing anything that threatened their dominance. They planned to use a new energy weapon to quell any colony that resisted, to make examples.
This evidence, it's damning, horrifying, but I have a plan. Present it to the Elysium Council live broadcast. Force their hand. I know it's a suicide mission, but the truth must ignite a fire.
The evidence was damning, horrifying, painting a picture of absolute corporate tyranny. Rook explained her plan. To present the evidence to the Elysium Council, live broadcast, to force their hand. She knew it was a suicide mission. OmniCorp wouldn't let her succeed. But she hoped the truth, once out, would ignite a fire. A system-wide call for change.
Varek, if I fail, release the data. Everywhere. It's my last resort, my legacy.
She asked Varek not to intervene, but to get the data, a copy of everything. If she failed, he was to release it to every news outlet, every colony, everywhere. It was her last resort, her legacy. The next day, Rook walked into the council chambers. Varek, Lyra, and Jax watched from a hidden vantage point. They had the duplicate data secure. The plaza outside the chambers was filled with protesters, workers from the lower decks. They had heard rumors of Rook's stand. Their faces were a mixture of hope and fear. OmniCorp security forces were out in strength, their black armor a stark contrast to the civilian clothes. The air crackled with anticipation. A storm was about to break. Rook began her speech, her voice amplified, ringing through the plaza. She presented her evidence, accusations against OmniCorp, clear and direct. For a moment there was silence, then chaos. OmniCorp's representatives shouted her down. The live feed cut out. In the plaza, security forces moved on the protesters. Blaster fire erupted. Screams echoed. Amidst the turmoil, a single shot. Clean, precise. Senator Alana Rook fell. Her last stand was over. The spark had been lit, but at a terrible cost.
Panic engulfed the plaza. OmniCorp security forces advanced. Their orders were clear: suppress the unrest, at any cost.
Varek saw it unfold. Rook was dead. Her sacrifice could not be in vain.
He looked at Lyra and Jax. No words were needed. They had the data. Their mission was clear. Get it out.
They moved quickly through the service corridors, back towards the... Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every distant shout made them jump.
Elysium Hub was locking down. Red alert klaxons blared, bulkheads slammed shut, trapping people, separating families. OmniCorp was trying to contain the situation and hunt down Rook's accomplices. Varek knew the station's backways, the routes not on official maps. He led Lyra and Jax through a labyrinth of maintenance shafts and forgotten tunnels. The sounds of the crackdown were never far behind. Boots on metal grates, shouted commands, sporadic bursts of weapon fire.
Reaching the docking bay where there was birthed was a challenge. Security patrols were everywhere.
Jax used his technical skills. He bypassed locked doors. He created diversions in the station's network. Lyra monitored comm channels. She guided them around enemy positions. Varek kept them moving, pushing them forward. They were a team, operating on instinct and adrenaline.
There were close calls, too many. A near miss with a patrol. A security checkpoint we barely slipped through.
Finally, their sanctuary, their escape pod. Jax powered up the engines. Lyra plotted a course, a risky one. Through a dense debris field, it would mask their signature. Varek took the helm.
As they pulled away from Elysium, explosions rocked the station behind them. The uprising had begun, fueled by Rook's death.
They had the data, they had escaped, but the fight was far from over. It was just beginning. They were fugitives now, carriers of a dangerous truth. Echoes of rebellion, the moon and Mars, the limp to Luna, the moon. humanity's first off-world colony, now a sprawling network of underground cities and mining outposts. Many were controlled by OmniCorp or heavily indebted to them.
Varek hoped to find allies and a place to repair there. The ship had taken some hits during their escape, nothing critical but enough to worry Jax.
They landed in a small, independent settlement, Shackleton Crater, a place known for its distrust of corporate authority. In Shackleton they found a sympathetic ear. The lunar colonists knew OmniCorp's heavy hand. They lived under the threat of resource exploitation, of crushing contracts.
Lyra carefully released parts of Rook's data, anonymously, through encrypted channels. It spread like wildfire. News of Rook's assassination, of OmniCorp's brutal crackdown on Elysium. It ignited protests on Luna, small at first, then growing. Workers walked off their jobs in OmniCorp mines, demanding justice, demanding change.
Their next stop was Mars, the Red Planet, a patchwork of struggling terraforming projects and domed cities. Mars had a long history of rebellion, of fighting for independence. Varek had old contacts there, smugglers, activists, people who knew how to live in the shadows.
He needed to gauge the mood, see if Rook's data was having an impact. The Martian colonies were a tinderbox. OmniCorp controlled vital water and atmospheric processing. They used it as a leash.
On Mars, the reaction to the data was explosive. Decades of resentment boiled over. Riots broke out in Valles Marineris. Sabotage crippled OmniCorp facilities. Militias formed. The Martians were arming themselves, preparing for a fight.
Varek, Lyra and Jax witnessed the raw anger, the desperate hope. They also saw OmniCorp's response, mercenary troops, swift, brutal reprisals. But this time the Martians fought back. The rebellion was spreading, system-wide. Rook's sacrifice was bearing fruit, but it was a bitter harvest.
Forging the uprising, the plan to return. The news from across the solar system was a mix of hope and horror. Uprisings on various colonies and stations, OmniCorp fighting back with ruthless efficiency. Varek knew that fragmented rebellions would be crushed, one by one.
They needed a decisive blow, something to shatter OmniCorp's central authority. That meant returning to Elysium Hub, the belly of the beast. It was a crazy idea, almost certainly a fatal one, yet it felt like the only path forward.
Lyra devised the core of the plan. They couldn't fight OmniCorp's fleet head-on, but they could hit its brain, the Central Command Network on Elysium. If they could broadcast the complete, unredacted data from Rook directly from OmniCorp's own systems, to every screen in the hub, to every terminal in the solar system, it would expose everything, their war crimes, their manipulation. It might be enough to turn even OmniCorp's own loyalists, to cripple them from within.
Getting the close enough to Elysium was the first hurdle. The station's defenses would be on high alert. He proposed using a daring maneuver. A ghost run through a blind spot in their sensor net. One he'd heard whispers about in smuggler circles.
Once inside, they would need to reach the central broadcast array. Deep within the most secure sector of the station, it would require a ground team, a small, fast unit. That meant Varek, Lyra, and himself.
They gathered allies, remnants of Rook's network, disaffected OmniCorp technicians, rebel cells from Luna and Mars, willing to create diversions. It was a fragile coalition, built on desperation and a shared enemy.
The risks were immense. Failure meant death, or worse. But the alternative was a future under OmniCorp's undisputed rule. A future no one in their fledgling alliance wanted to imagine. It was repaired, armed with a few new, illicitly acquired surprises. They were ready, or as ready as they could be. Breaching the beast Elysium under siege, they approached Elysium Hub under a cloak of silence. Jax piloted them through the sensor blind spot, his knuckles white on the controls. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut. Every blip on the proximity alert was a potential disaster.
They slipped past OmniCorp patrols, undetected, a small miracle. Or perhaps OmniCorp was too busy dealing with system-wide unrest.
They docked at an abandoned maintenance airlock, one Lyra had found in old station schematics. Varek, Lyra, and Jax, clad in scavenged OmniCorp utility uniforms, moved into the station. Elysium was a changed place. Security checkpoints everywhere. Armed guards patrolling corridors once filled with shoppers and tourists. The atmosphere was heavy with fear.
They moved like ghosts through the service tunnels, avoiding patrols, bypassing security systems. Lyra's hacking skills were crucial. Jax's ability to disable physical locks and sentry guns kept them alive. Varek led, making split-second decisions, trusting his gut.
Their goal, the central broadcast spire, located in the heavily fortified command sector. As they got closer, resistance stiffened. OmniCorp knew something was wrong. Alarms began to sound, not the general lockdown of before. These were targeted, sector-specific. They were being hunted.
They fought their way through short, brutal firefights in narrow corridors. Jax laid down covering fire. Lyra disabled automated defenses. Varek pushed them onward. They were running out of time.
Suddenly the entire station shuddered. Explosions rocked the outer hull. Their allies had started their diversionary attacks. Small ships, armed mining drones hitting non-critical targets, drawing away OmniCorp forces. It bought Varek's team precious minutes.
As they reached the broadcast control room, OmniCorp initiated a full station lockdown. This was it, no turning back. The final confrontation was about to begin. The workers in the lower decks, hearing the commotion, began their own uprising. Elysium Hub was tearing itself apart.
A new dawn, the cost of freedom. The battle for the broadcast control room was desperate. OmniCorp elite guards defended it fiercely. Varek and his team were outnumbered, outgunned, but they fought with the fury of those with nothing left to lose.
Jax took a hit to the leg, but he kept fighting.
Lyra, cool under fire, worked frantically to interface Rook's data drive with the broadcast system. Varek held the line, buying her time. Each second felt like an eternity. Blaster bolts seared the air.
Finally, Lyra screamed, "It's uploading! The full feed is going out!"
Across Elysium Hub, screens flickered. Then Rook's face appeared. Her voice echoed. The unedited evidence of OmniCorp's crimes flooded the station. And then the system. The impact was immediate. Confusion. Disbelief. Then rage. OmniCorp's security forces hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. Others turned on their commanders. The workers' uprising surged. The carefully constructed facade of OmniCorp's authority crumbled. Live, for the entire solar system to see.
Victory came at a high price. Jax would need extensive medical attention. Lyra was exhausted, emotionally drained. Varek felt the weight of every life lost, every sacrifice made.
OmniCorp's leadership was in disarray. Many were captured, some fled. Elysium Hub was in chaos. But it was a chaos born of new possibilities. A provisional government was forming, composed of former dissidents, workers, and even some defecting OmniCorp personnel. The road ahead would be long, difficult.
In the aftermath, the crew of them made their choices. Lyra decided to stay on Elysium, to help rebuild, to ensure the mistakes of the past weren't repeated.
Jax, once healed, planned to train new engineers for the fledgling free colonies.
Varek knew his path lay elsewhere. He wasn't a politician or a builder. He was a captain. He said his goodbyes. The repaired and refueled, lifted from Elysium. It flew towards the sunrise. A small ship against the vastness of space, a symbol of hope. A new dawn was breaking, hard-won, fragile but real.